N-
Hey, what's up, Becca?
Hey Nick, how's it going?
Good, good. I'm doing well. I haven't had enough
Great.
coffee yet.
I've had quite a bit of coffee. It's all good though. It was very tasty coffee. So now I am drinking my electrolytes and vitamin C.
Ooh, nice. Fight
Yeah.
off that scurvy.
That's right. Welcome everybody to this is day 3 of lunch week, where every day lunchtime is launch time at Open Sauce this week. And I'm Becca. I'm the developer experience lead at Open Sauce. And today we are very excited to be revealing our repository pages, which, we have like rolled out a little bit slowly and shared, but we've gotten new things that have shipped. We're looking at something called the lottery factor, which we will talk about later today. Goes right along with our topic today, which is metrics that matter in open source. You can find out more about what we're doing over on our site at opensauce.pizza. But if you want to check out all the things that we've been doing during lunch week, it's opensauce.pizza/lunch week. And that shows you all of the things that we've revealed this week, including our maintainer course, our workspaces 1.5 um, with our new PR and issue tables, and today with our repository tables. It also gives you links to all of our blog posts. We'll have our teammate John a little bit later on. He's going to be coming straight from a webinar. So he's going to talk to us about creating the lottery factor and how that works with our repository pages. So definitely check all of these things out. It's been a great lunch week so far. If you have questions, if you have feedback, definitely let us know because we love feedback.
And we also love pizza. Not gonna lie. I've said it, I think every stream so far, but I ate pizza last Saturday and then I ate it on Sunday again. But I've I haven't had pizza this week yet, so I think I'm due. Although I did make a pizza yesterday, but not for me, for my kids' lunches. So
Uh,
I don't know. I think I need a slice very soon. So don't know if I'll be grabbing a slice today, but I guarantee you I'm having at least a couple slices before we're done with lunch week because I don't know, pizza makes everything better. At least that's what my elders told me. I don't know if your
yeah.
elders told you that too, but
I'm not sure. I think I was just born knowing that though. It's just like handed down
okay,
hereditarily. So
okay.
it was there.
Kind of like the Lion King when they hold up the pizza, or it's like,
That's right. That's what
anyways.
we do in Ohio instead.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of
um,
raising up the next Lion King, we show pizza. All right.
So
Anyways, go
speaking of
ahead, Becca.
favorite pizzas, though, we do have a repository at Open Sauce called the Pizzaverse. So if you want to
Oh yeah.
share your favorite pizza, or sorry, Nick, this was not in the links. I just thought of it.
Oh no, it's
If you
okay.
want to share your favorite pizza, you can drop it in the chat today. Or if you want to put it out there for the whole world to know, you can go ahead and go over and contribute to this repository where you can share recipes, you can share pictures, you can talk about pizza in your culture and what that looks like. Nick is going to add, did you add poutine pizza? Somebody added poutine pizza. So,
Yeah, it wasn't me. I do live in the land of poutine. It basically, I guess not all food is like this, but poutine can literally have literally anything on it. Like I think the main thing is it just has to have French fries and cheese, and there's gravy as well. But like typically when you do like different kinds of poutines, the traditional gravy might not mix well with it. Like, but I've seen there's this place called La Banquise in Montreal, and it's open 24 hours, so you can literally get poutine any time of the day. And I've been there early in the morning when I was a little younger, and I've seen all kinds of poutines, like not pizza yet, but I've definitely seen smoked meat. I've seen like it's almost like they just say like this is my favorite meal, and I just want to put that on top of these French fries now. That's kind of what it translates to. So
I mean, that seems like a valid choice.
yeah, no,
Do you
exactly,
put
and
pineapple on it though?
I personally never have, but I'm not gonna judge anyone that does. I mean, you know, I'm very welcoming to anybody that eats poutine. So, anyways, but yeah, there is a poutine pizza. I think you said in the Pizzaverse, so definitely check that out if folks want to do that. And I see
Yeah.
there's a bit
I
of
was
chatter
sorry, I was
in the
trying to
chat.
catch up on the chat. I missed it for a while. Hey everyone. It's great to have you
Oh yeah.
here.
Oh, Anthony's popped in. I am literally at a bar
Yeah.
eating pizza right now. No joke. Thank you for repping the brand. Appreciate it.
Oh man, I
And
love Little Caesars growing up. We didn't have one around us, so we had to travel like an hour away and we would go to this mall and then we would get Little Caesars pizza and I just thought that was the greatest thing in the world.
we had the commercials, but we didn't have the pizza. So like it was like a like Caesar from you know, like the olden times. It was this little Caesar cartoon guy, and he'd be like pizza, pizza.
Yeah,
And I remember
pizza,
seeing that,
pizza.
yeah, like even on regular air channels back in the day. But we did not have a Little Caesars. We didn't have like even Boston pizza, which is like newer, I think in the last 20 years. I don't think we got that in Montreal until like maybe 15 years ago or 10 years ago. There's always like some we tend to get American chains the last in Canada.
Mm,
So anyways, like we finally got a Taco Bell, but like I actually no, I don't think we have Taco Bell still. Or no, we do. We don't have Popeyes yet. Um
I don't have
which is good.
Popeyes. I don't think I've ever
Oh,
had
okay.
Popeyes.
It's chicken. It's good. We should be talking about pizza though. I feel like I love all these foods we're talking about, but yeah. Anyways, but
That's right.
uh, yeah, it's yeah. We were talking about um for the next lunch week, whenever that is. I think it'd be cool to either have like our local pizzas and like sharing those and like kind of like a real life pizza verse session, you know? And so and who knows, maybe I don't know, I'm forward thinking here in terms of the next lunch week, but maybe folks could post their pizza pics and stuff, and or just share them in the repo, and then we could share those on the stream, you know, like
Yeah, we also actually in Discord, if you want to drop our Discord link, we have a Pizza Picks channel. So,
okay.
we are really all about the pizza. This is not just a tangent. We are living this life.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of the reasons why I decided to work here. Like, you know, there was two
The
big
pizza.
offers. One
So
was yeah,
good.
one was like we're all about salads, and then B Dougie's like we do pizza, and I was like sold. So you know, you got to make your choices. Nothing against salad. I enjoy a good salad, but pizza had my heart. That's all I could say, I guess. But I'm gonna
They used to have like this spice pizza flavor. I don't know if they still have it, but I remember putting that
okay.
on popcorn when I was a kid, but you could also like top your salad with pizza
Oh, okay.
flavor. That sounds
Interesting.
interesting. I don't know if it sounds
Yeah.
good or not.
Yeah, and just gonna say, hey, we got some chat. We don't like even when I've streamed on my own, I typically don't get stuff on Twitter. But Jason Torres from Tech Commutes over on Twitter saying, hey, and he said, yeah, heck yeah, when is the pizza getting here? And when we were talking about Little Caesars, he's like pizza, pizza. So it's definitely a common theme, Little Caesars for a certain generation, I think. So
I do not know how to see the chat on Twitter still.
it's it's
Oh, I
not
see it now.
complicated, but it's not obvious. So you have to go to where it
Yeah.
says we have it, yeah. It's
I had to
not
like click
comments
the
in the
actual screen because like it shows
yeah,
up and there's the comments and it shows nothing. But once I click it, I can see. Cool.
yeah. I would have thought it would have made more sense for it to be just comments under it and you could play it, but
But it
anyways,
would.
I guess that's why I'm not working at Twitter. Um, cool, cool, cool. Yeah, like Becca was saying, oh, actually, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Nick Taylor. I work with Becca. I'm not just some random person on this stream with her. Uh, I'm a senior software engineer over here at OpenSauce, so been building out a lot of this stuff. Also want to give a shout out to my coworker, or our coworker Zayu. She put a lot of work into the repository pages that we're going to talk about today, so big hat tip to her. I should probably fax her a pizza. If she has a fax, I don't know. If she knows what a fax is, I don't know. I'm too old. I feel like, anyways. Uh, cool, cool, cool.
I had to fax something, like official paperwork, and I had to figure out how to send a fax. Like, it doesn't even make sense. Um,
It's kind of complicated if you don't have well, it's not super complicated if you don't have a fax, but you have to find, like last time I did it, I had to use an email service, and it basically you just send an email through their service and then it does the fax for you. But it still kind of boggles my mind that tons of hospitals use faxes still. Like I still don't understand why you just can't send an email. But anyways, there's clearly something I'm missing about the system, or maybe it's better in the States, but there's a lot of faxes here still. So
oh, no, it's the same thing. I think that's what I had to send a fax for. Um,
okay.
but speaking of fax, but not
Oh, nice.
FAX, FACTS,
Yeah,
let's talk about some facts that we know about open source projects.
cool. Yeah, let's do it.
Um, so we're talking about metrics, and metrics can be a really tricky thing. So it's important to understand and be informed about projects, whether that's your own project or a project that you might be considering, and trying to figure out like what does that mean? What are the metrics that matter? And the truth is, it depends.
Yeah.
And not everybody is going to see metrics in the same way. So that's why I think it's important to think about like, well, what are your goals for the project? And then how do you evaluate those goals? So, actually, one of the projects that I wrote about, it was yesterday, for workspaces. I wrote
Hmm.
about create React app.
Yeah.
And we looked at some of the things that were on the workspace, and some of like the initial metrics that we looked at were stars and forks and I don't know, issues and pull requests. So that
Yeah.
gave us some information and kind of helped us to trace the history of the project. So I went to boot camp, and I believe that was our final project using Create React App to
Okay.
create a project that we can share and that we could walk through. But now it doesn't appear that it's being maintained at all anymore. And so we were able to
Hmm.
look through that stuff. And so, maybe if you're new to open source and you're trying to figure out, like, hey, what technology should I be working with? You want to make sure that that's being maintained because otherwise you're probably
Yeah.
going to run into complications. And like if you look at the issues and pull requests that are on the repository now, you can tell that things are breaking and it's not the same experience it was when I was in boot camp 5 years
Yeah.
ago. So, that could be one use case if you're looking to build something or contribute. What is another use case, Nick, for making sure that you can evaluate or look at the metrics of a project?
Yeah. Well, there, you mentioned like the pull requests and the issues. There's stuff like we're definitely gonna talk about the lottery factor in a bit here, but like I think it does tie into the lottery factor, but like, you know, I guess like without talking about lottery factor right now, like it's very difficult to know if you go to like a GitHub repository right now, like who's working on this project or how many people are working on it, or like, oh, it looks, like you can definitely dig in through the repository. Like I could say like, okay, let me look at the pull requests. Okay, I can, filter on the merged ones and I can maybe see the activity. It's not necessarily, like a good enough picture though, because like who are these people? Are they core contributors or not? Like there's just a lot of things that, like, even though all this information is available on GitHub in all different places, it's kind of hard like to ask a question like, is this project being maintained, or like uh But on the flip side, I will say, like, to your point about create React app, yes, it's not really being maintained anymore. And like the React docs, if you go to react.dev, they suggest other alternatives now, like v create app and stuff. But another thing that's interesting about some projects is like they could be feature complete, so there's not a lot of activity, like depending on what it is, like so like there might not be much activity, and maybe there's not even like that many contributors to it. It's not necessarily a bad thing. And I'm gonna I all I wanted to say there, I'll bring you on in a second there, John, is like just because there's not activity is all it's again, these are metrics and context matters, right? So like because it's feature complete, it doesn't necessarily mean it's not maintained. It just might mean like, kind of like what I was saying to you yesterday, like Coca-Cola, they keep making new flavors, but I gotta be honest, I'm still fine with the regular one, like I don't need like, artisanal infused Coca-Cola, or like new Coke and then newer new Coke and then like anyways, I digress. But let me just bring in John into the live stream. So just give me 1 second there. And
Yeah, so John is going to come on in a second and he's going to talk a little bit about the lottery factor. We'll drop a link to his blog post here in 1 second for you to check out. It does kind of a deep dive, and we're going to be sharing some of the resources he used, because lottery factor is one of those metrics that it's not that common. It's not an easy thing just to look at. You can't go to GitHub and say, like, what's the lottery factor of this repository? But what does lottery factor even mean? I'm gonna send it over to John, and John can explain that for us.
Hey y'all, thanks for having me up on the stage. Glad to be here. What is the lottery factor? So, I like to think about the lottery factor as, just another little piece of the pie, another thing in the story that makes up maybe your project or your ecosystem. Because it's not necessarily a rating. It's something that can factor into the greater of the whole for
yeah.
understanding all this. So, uh, semantically, how we define the lottery factor is the number of people that would basically need to disappear from a project, aka they won the lottery, they're off living their best life on the beach, they are nowhere near a computer, they're not reachable, they're gone. um,
Yeah.
and prior to this, how people have been defining this was maybe the bus factor. I think the Apache projects calls it the pony factor, which is bizarre, but lottery factor being the number of people that need to disappear, and then we kind of grade it relative to the number of those people. So if one person is doing like the majority of the commits, the majority of the work across the span of time, that's going to be a very, very high factor. And then the opposite, if it's like 5, 6, 7, 8 people doing
Yeah.
50% of the work across that span of time, that's going to be low, and then we kind of swing it from there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's something that I'm very, very personally invested in, mostly because I've like experienced it firsthand. Projects that the main maintainer has disappeared, and then you're like,
Yeah.
I need help. Like, please merge my thing. Like, this is critical to not only like what I'm working on at work in the open source, but
Yeah.
also like to the ecosystem. Like, yeah, it's pretty wild when that happens to you, and you realize that open source has really kind of stood up on the shoulders of like just a handful of people,
Yeah.
a lot fewer than you think there would be.
Yeah, no, that's a great explainer. And for folks who might not have heard the term lottery factor, it's a nicer way of saying things. There's an older term called buzz factor, which is just a terrible way of explaining it. I just want to mention it, not because I want to be gruesome, but people might be familiar only with that term. And it
Mhm.
literally means like what would happen to this project if person X got hit by a bus, which is a terrible way to think about it. And I'm not sure whoever came up with that, because lottery factor just makes me sleep better at night.
I did hear
But
a story of where it came from. Maybe it feels
okay.
like folklore at this point, but a lot of Google's campuses have these buses that will bus people around
Oh,
San
okay.
Francisco and all this stuff. And I think one way people were thinking about it at a time was like, what if one of these buses with an entire team on it suddenly like crashed, and then these people were like not able to work? Like, what would
Hmm.
happen to that team and that product? bus factor. Very gruesome, very sad. I like the framing of becoming rich and going to the beach and never looking at a computer again.
Yeah. I also like it better because like I'm a fan of public transport and I don't want people to not start taking public transport because like what if
Yes,
so cool.
exactly. I also
Um,
love public transit.
I think this is probably a good time to show a repository page, and we can kind of maybe walk through what John wrote up about the progression. So the
Sure.
first one that John looked at in the post was
Yeah, and I shared the post in the chat for folks.
analog.
Okay. I think is it analog.js/analog? I can't
It's
remember.
analog.js/analog. It's in the
Okay.
doc.
Oh yeah, it would help if I learned how to read, eh, Becca? Cool. All right, I'm just gonna zoom it in here just so folks can see this a little better.
Nice. Yeah. So this is analog, which is a very cool disclaimer. Brandon, who invented this, is on our
Works
team.
with this.
And there on the right, you can see, I don't know why the avatars aren't popping up, but there on the right, you can see the lottery factor visualization, which is really that distribution of like who is doing the majority of the work over a distribution of time. So over the last 30 days, it's 2 people have done 50% of the work, which rates this as high. And that makes sense. That makes sense in the story of analog, because Brandon is the one that dedicates much of his free time to working on this. So that 100% tracks with the story of this project. Again, it's not a rating. It's not like it's bad. It just is part of understanding the story of this. Maybe you're an open source program office and you depend on this and you realize like, oh shoot, like Brandon is very, very, very important to this project and this ecosystem. We should probably sponsor him, or we should probably connect with him and like have a call just so we can like understand his needs in the community and like what's been going on and stuff.
I love that idea of sponsorship there. I feel like that should be a feature, right? Like this project has a high lottery factor. You should sponsor this person. That's a great idea.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
And with the lottery factor too, you can also, it changes when we change the range, right?
That is correct. Yeah. So if you go up to the range, you could go 90, 100, 1 year, whatever. And it'll move. Oh no, lottery factor gone.
Yeah. Let me check what's up.
But
it works on my screen.
Yeah.
Works on my computer.
Live, so yeah.
I know. You gotta love the live demo.
It could be, yeah. I'll check that out in a sec, but I'm gonna just demos, am I right?
I know.
Cool.
The demo gods come for us all. It's great.
Yeah.
I think it's important just to point that out because it might be a high lottery factor because you just shipped a big feature and one person primarily worked on that thing, right? And so to get a really nice context of the project, it's good to look at it over a period of time as well. Or you might see like, hey, somebody was super involved 6 months ago and they're not. And now this is where we're at. We have lost someone. Contributions have gone down, but also we're at risk for more of a lottery factor because now the next person in line is at risk, right? So you can sometimes see how that stuff kind of can impact each other. So there's a question. For us aspiring maintainers, would analog be helpful in knowing the major tools or coding languages being used for a project we want to contribute to?
Interesting. Like using the repo page or the lottery factor for like understanding like good places to make open source contributions.
Yeah, Robodom, can you clarify your question? And while you're typing that out, John, I think I interrupted you, so apologies for that.
Oh, it's all good. It's all good. Yeah, I think that's an interesting use case because you can kind of get a feeling for a community a little bit from the repo page. Like seeing open and closed issues and pull requests being merged and stuff. You know, I think maybe an obvious bad vibe would be like super high lottery factor. Only one person is making the contributions. There's no merge pull requests. The issues are all open. There's no closed issues within the time frame. Like that to me would be like, walking into, a classroom and everyone's laughing at you or something. Bad analogy,
Okay.
but you get the idea. So I think it could be a good way to just gain a little bit more understanding. And again, understanding that that story that's kind of being told through these insights and metrics.
Cool. I'm just loading up something here so we can keep talking. There seems to be the front end seems to be, oh, okay, here we go. Let me go to, I'm on the wrong page, but let's get back to it.
Caps.
Cool. All right. So let's go to
Sneak peek for tomorrow.
back.
Hide it quick.
Analog.
Analog JS / analog.
Yeah.
You can
Close your
also,
eyes, everybody.
pro
Looks
tip,
like it's back.
one thing I've been doing is Command K, and then that'll open the search bar that we have, and then you can just type analog.
Oh yeah.
And
See,
then
I'm not even
that
using our
fancy
features.
tips here.
Pro
Let's
tip.
do that. Okay. Yeah, I don't know how it works. I just built it. Joking.
At the bottom.
Yeah, no, I always forget that we have this here. So
best
okay,
feature.
cool.
Good feature. So yeah, if you pop it over to like 90 days or something, you'll see it switch over to what looks like moderate. Mostly because it's a bigger distribution of different people doing different things. But we still see Brandon is making a lot of these contributions. So again, tells that story of contributions over time and the important people within the project.
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Becca. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, so we've taken a look at this a little bit, and I know that, John, you have another example in your blog post with Core.js. So maybe let's take a look at that, and then John can talk about the insights that he got there.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, totally. So if you don't know, Core.js is a polyfill library for the web, which is basically a way of saying, these different browsers have different standards and APIs and expectations of how JavaScript works within the browser. Core.js is one of those libraries, really big glue library that kind of makes Internet Explorer work with, or the JavaScript you might be sending to like Internet Explorer also work with Firefox or Safari or whatever, Chrome, any of these.
Yeah.
You would look at this and you would say, oh, this looks like maybe some person's side project, or it's not getting a lot of love in the last 30 days or something. This is one of the most widely used JavaScript libraries across the entire internet. At one time, it was estimated that like 99 some plus percent. And, it's a bit hard to actually tell because it's kind of one of those dependency poisoning kind of projects where it shows up in one important thing. That thing gets, installed as a dependency in another thing. And then all of a sudden, Core.js is literally everywhere. So this is an interesting story because you would look at this and you'd see no contributions. Pop it up to like maybe 6 months or something.
Okay. Yeah, and for context, why it's like heavily used, like for any kind of front end bundling or tooling, it's essentially in there, and that's why it's like so prevalent. So so we got 6 months here now, John.
So over 6 months, you can see that there's been a number of pull requests opened. Only 2 have merged. You look at the contributions, and it's mostly the main person who owns the repo. And it sort of starts to tell you a picture of like, this feels a little riskier because, maybe this one person over a period of time just will decide to not, maintain an important project. And then everybody's kind of a sitting duck, which we see if, it says very high for a project that doesn't have any contributions over that period of time. And that was over the 30 days. But partly because that was a conscious decision we wanted to make about these types of projects that may reflect like, hey, nothing's been going on. Maybe this is a problem. Again, it tells that story. And kind of infamously, Core.js has been one of those projects that I think people like to point to as a sort of high lottery factor project. It's used everywhere. It's been dependency injected into everything, and one person one person maintains and manages the entire thing. So uh,
Yeah.
there is also a sort of a security spin on this, where you can kind of think about this as like, not being managed by a group or an organization or a company or a foundation or something. It's being managed by one person, which can in some eyes reflect a security risk, where if that person decides one day to, like, inject a bunch of malicious code, that could very well just be consumed very easily down the supply chain, which then we would
Yeah,
call a
sure.
supply chain attack. So, yeah, that's another way you could spin the lottery factor to look at, is like, the sort of supply chain attack risk factor of, like, the number of people sort of on guard for these
Hmm.
important dependency chain sort of projects, which I would call Core.js that. So yeah, helps
Yeah.
illuminate some of that story for sure.
Yeah, and I think Core.js too, because I remember, because like, I don't know why, but I was always the person that had to configure Webpack before, like, it
Oh
was
no.
built into, and it's one of the core libraries typically when you use Babel and all that stuff
Hmm.
in something like Webpack. And I remember at one point they were looking for they wanted to obviously make some money off of open source, and they were injecting ads into the log, so when you would install you would see, like, support
Yeah.
Core.js. I'm not saying that's a bad thing necessarily, but I know it upset a lot of people, but it kind of ties into like the one man show kind of here.
Yeah.
um
He What
but
he did
it's,
was
yeah.
he used the post install script to just console
Oh
log a
yeah.
bunch of stuff, which typically you would use a post install script to, like, do some post installation steps of, like, cleaning something up or, like, setting some environments or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, it kind of felt like a takeover of a system in npm that, was maybe not for that use case, but maybe good. I think out of that came the npm fund
Hmm.
capability, which now you could use to actually, yeah, fund important npm projects out in the ecosystem.
Cool, cool, cool. Um, I was gonna say, in terms of the uh, I don't know if we want to focus on some other metrics too, or do we want to keep talking about the lottery factor some more, Becca?
Did you want to run through your last example with Kubernetes, John?
Sure. Yeah, I think
Okay.
that's, yeah. So we looked at kind of high, moderate with analog, where Brandon is, a very obviously important person in that project. We looked at a very high example here, where Core.js is kind of everywhere and it's a little scary. Uh, Kubernetes, I think, is that totally opposite side, where the lottery factor is super duper low. There's just a huge number of contributors across all different companies and ecosystems contributing back into Kubernetes. It's a very important ecosystem project, not only within the cloud native ecosystem and the CNCF, the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, but also a lot of companies depend on it as part of some of their managed service products. And I think that's reflected
Yeah.
really, really well here, where you see a few of these people. Like, I know Dims, the third on the list there. He's at Amazon, at AWS, working with open source at AWS, but also with the Elastic Kubernetes service. I know
Okay.
that second person, I believe, is at Crossplane, which is another Kubernetes provider for um, federated Kubernetes, which is a really cool project. But those just happen to be the top few. Over, like, the entire distribution of contributors, it's very well spread. So if any one of
Okay.
those individual people suddenly, won the lottery and disappeared, the entire Kubernetes ecosystem wouldn't be in, like, shambles, right? Um,
Okay.
so yeah, it's a cool reflection, I think, of just the health of the cloud native computing ecosystem, and makes me very bullish on Kubernetes, which I always am.
Yeah. And yeah, and I guess I think you touched on this, but like, there's obviously a lot of companies invested in the success of
Yes.
Kubernetes, and that definitely attributes to, like, spreading the load of the work. Versus like the Core.js, where it's, someone flying solo, their project got popular, but unfortunately people didn't decide to potentially sponsor them, or maybe, I'm sure they have sponsors to some degree, but it's just like a whole different ball game.
Yeah.
Um, I'm throwing this out here. This isn't in the script or anything, but I'm kind of curious.
Ooh, spicy.
Yeah, yeah. Have you seen any like lottery factors that are very high for, like, you know like a Kubernetes like project where like people like it's not spread properly, or like the distribution of the workload is just like it's like literally like one person, but there's like several companies, or like again, there might not be an example of this that you can think of, but I'm just curious if you can think of any offhand.
That's a great question. Yeah, Core.js is a good example. So you're asking like where there's like this kind of wide adoption. There's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like,
Let me quick poke around because I have one in mind, but I want to
okay.
before I say it out loud.
Yeah, like I can think of Curl, but I don't know if Curl is backed by companies, because I know I forget their last name, but Daniel, the creator of Curl, is pretty much the main contributor, I think, still, and like,
Oh yeah,
but I
that's
don't.
a great example actually. Yeah, pop that open.
Okay, because I wasn't sure. Like, obviously, it's a very widely used tool, but I wasn't sure if like that's company backed at all. Um,
It sort of is. It's kind of one of those like Linux foundational. I'd be surprised if the Linux Foundation wasn't involved somehow. Um,
okay,
oh, do the last 1 year because that's
okay,
interesting.
okay,
Daniel alone, Badger
yeah,
has over 500 with 30%
yeah,
of the spread. That's huge for a whole year's worth of a project where it's like you're the one person doing that.
yeah,
I'm not sure who that second person is, but I mean, those next two have, basically combined another 30%,
yeah.
which across three people, 60% some of the total contributions is kind of
Mm-hmm.
wild for a project like this, where it's
Yeah,
basically in every single Linux system ever. It's
yeah.
a core piece of a lot of products, really. And that also provides a lot of like library support. Like I know
Mm-hmm.
that they're involved obviously in like TLS stuff, probably some of the like OpenSSL libraries, libSSL, I'm sure. I mean, like there's a list of FTP, FTPS, HTTP,
Yeah,
HTTPS, IMAP, like all those protocols are sort of directly supported, if not just implemented by curl,
yeah,
to make that work on like every Linux system ever. So, um,
yeah.
pull requests is interesting. It looks like pull requests. I wonder if that. I haven't looked at curl in a while. Let me open their GitHub to see if this is true.
Okay.
But merged is 0, which probably tells me the story there is that they just directly send it right on the main branches. Good
Okay.
old, ye old Linux style without
Oh
using.
yeah. Well, I'm hovering over the graph here. Also, again, shout out to Zayu for putting in these graphs here. But yeah, it's what you're
they
saying. There's a ton open and none are merged. Like it's all
uh
green. So
they're a little weird how they do this. They don't merge. They close pull requests, and then Badger will directly send it on the main branch. Does that make sense? Like basically
yeah, yeah.
Linux mailing list style, where it's like you would mail them
Okay.
you would email them a patch, and then Linus will just merge it for you on the main
Okay.
branch. So it paints a picture. That's the style of how they do this, which is definitely unique. Which is why you would see
Mm-hmm.
like 1,000 plus open, 0
Yeah.
merged. Maybe it'd be interesting to see closed in here because then that would show up right alongside the opened.
Yeah. I don't think we have. Do we have closed here? Am I not
Uh,
looking at the right?
I think it's just merged. Yeah, I don't think we have closed. So
Oh yeah, yeah. There's no
feature ad for the
merged. It's
future. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's literally zero. Yeah, it's zero. It's the bottom line. Sorry, 0, 0, 0, 0. And
Yep.
but but this is super interesting because like the context of a project matters. And like
Yeah.
this is clearly a style of how they work, but it doesn't mean that there's not a lot of activity here. Because like if I were to look at this without the context you just mentioned, I'd be like, wow, I guess they're just not taking contributions. That's
Hmm.
that's what it looks like.
Yeah. And I think if you're obviously invested in these projects, looking at them like, I think a lot of people love to look at star charts and it's like, ooh, stars. And it's like, how popular at at the high school table am I? I
Yeah.
like that we put stars at the bottom because, in my opinion, it tells the the least amount. Really, it's like the most flyby kind of thing. Um,
Hmm.
But if you're like already deeply involved in this project, and like I had looked at this a little bit at my last job working on some Linux systems, I kind of had that inkling already that was like, like this is probably Linux mailing list style project management. So that's probably why it's zero merged, and you would have that relevant context and be able to like paint this picture a little more clearly for yourself using all this information, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and no, I agree with you. It's nice that these metrics are at the bottom, but the the other thing too is like you said, like people like there's star charts everywhere. Like people will post them online and stuff. Like, hey, we got
Mm-hmm.
X amount of stars, but it's I don't know. Like the way I treat stars is more like bookmark, sometimes supporting people, but I know there's a whole like dark part of that too now where people can even buy stars and stuff like which is not
Yeah.
great. And so like we still display this in our metrics, but I think the better story is like we've got forks in here too, and like what's the correlation there? Like, okay, you got 20,000 stars, but if there's like 2 forks, what does that story tell, right?
Sorry, was that? I got totally distracted.
It's all good. It's all good. No, I was gonna say like you were saying, we have the stars at the bottom in the graphs here. I got nervous for a second because I didn't see you because I'm looking at the chat and I was like, did
Oh
my
yeah.
internet just drop? I'm like, so
John, you were also
yes,
like very still when you weren't talking. And so then I wasn't sure.
yeah,
You could have just been like, oh, sorry, it froze. I didn't catch that.
yeah.
Just playing a
It's
prank on
like
you, Nick.
yeah, no, it's like I always tell people, it's like I'm never stressed out about live streaming or live coding. It's always like, is the internet working? Is the sound on? Is the video working?
I know.
Aside everything else, I'm like, it's just I'm cool as a cucumber. But
Yeah.
anyways, but yeah, no, I was just saying to your point where like you have the stars, we have the stars on the bottom in the charts,
Mm-hmm.
and it's there's a whole area there where like people even buy stars nowadays, and like I
Yeah.
don't know everybody, but I was responding to somebody when they were asking about stars, and I said honestly I treat them a lot like bookmarks because like I'll check it out later. It's a form of support in some way,
Yeah.
but I like that we show the surface the forks too, because I don't think I've ever really seen people talk about forks as much, and it's nice to show it beside it and like what's the correlation. And so like uh eh, what I was saying before is like, hey, that's great, you got 20,000 stars, but like how many forks are there? Because that tells the story of like, are people actually contributing or is it
Mm-hmm.
something else?
Yeah. And
And
especially for like the health of ecosystem projects. I think this is really interesting for curl because it actually looks pretty healthy for me of like number of forks that are happening.
mhm,
You do see a few spikes correlated with like star spikes. So I think that one spike on the left, from like 6 months ago or something, uh,
yeah,
there was something that happened where I think there was some like crazy security vulnerability that they fixed, and they
okay,
like talked a bunch about it and stuff, and I'm sure it generated a bunch of buzz. But
okay,
seeing some of that correlation of like forks happening, maybe people deciding to come back and contribute, given like some of the interesting little things happening around that time, yeah, can
yeah,
again paint the picture for especially the maintainers would know about this, and kind of what's going on, right?
hmm, yeah, no, totally. um
Do
I
you want
know
to take a
we've
look at the contributor tab?
yeah, no, for sure. Thanks. I was getting in the weeds there, Becca. Thanks for pulling me out. Cool.
Yeah, so
Do you
the
want to
nice thing
speak to
about
the
the
contributors? Yeah.
the nice thing about the contributor tab is it gives you more information about the contributors and their latest pull requests. So you can, if you click on the latest pull request there, Nick,
Yeah.
yeah. So it shows you some valuable information about that and the things that they're doing. Sorry, I was just like trying to get a zoomed in view of that, which can
I can
also
zoom in
help
more.
you to identify
Okay.
what they're
Yeah.
working on. And these contributions are that we're showing here on the repository pages. They're just the contributions for that particular repo. So you'll notice there's like the little repo card there, and it corresponds
Yeah.
with whatever repo page you have open. And that just helps you to be able to more quickly see, like, okay, who is an impactful contributor. So you can look at it that way. You can also look at it in the list view as well, which maybe gives you an easier scan of like, oh, okay, like look at what they've been doing in the last 30 days. And you can see from that line graph. Is that a line graph?
Yeah. Could be a
Yeah.
heart rate monitor, maybe. Who knows?
Yeah.
I
Okay.
So,
John, I feel like you were going to correct me, and you should, because if I shouldn't call it a line graph, you tell me what it's called.
I think it's a line graph. I was calling things histograms for the
Oh
longest
yeah.
time that were definitely not histograms. Because a histogram should just be, oh man, now I need to Google this again because
I know. Now I'm like
what
Googling, what is a
is a
histogram? Go ahead
histogram?
and tell
Yeah.
us.
Okay, yeah.
yeah.
The histogram is just
Oh, it
where it's
uses
like,
rectangles.
yes, the line chart
Yeah.
basically. I mean, you could derive a line graph from like the top of the histograms anyway. So
Yeah.
I was going to say something and then I doubted myself, but it's a line graph.
Yeah. I was gonna
And it
say
also,
like, yeah. Oh, go ahead, Becca.
I was going to say, like, there's some valuable information here that lets you know when the last time someone contributed was, how many contributions they've had, and the languages they've been using. So this gives you a little bit more of general information about those contributors. But it's another really good way to kind of identify the lottery factor too. I think just by visually noticing, like, okay, this person, or it's nice to see like how frequently someone has contributed. And so, Nick, if you go back to that other view, the
Yeah.
square view, words are not
The
my thing
card
today.
the card view. Yeah.
Thank
Let's
you.
just call everything histograms. Let's just do that.
Can you go to the histogram view? This is also not a
There's
histogram.
there's some statisticians out there that just died
Yeah.
inside Nick. Everything's a
Yeah.
histogram.
Oh, someone needs to make the Oprah meme.
Yeah.
Please do, and please add us on Twitter.
You get a
But if you want to
histogram. You
scroll
get a
down and
histogram.
kind of look through this, Nick, I think that that visual representation also helps you identify, like, oh, look, this person is gearing up. They've made a
Yeah.
lot of contributions recently, or like in the opposite direction. I don't see any examples here, but maybe you'll see someone who has a graph, and on the left hand side of the graph, there's tons of contributions, and then it just like either slowly goes down or there's
Yeah.
absolutely nothing. And so it can be just a really easier way to identify what's going on with your contributors and how to be able to look at
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I can actually open I just know because I've seen this before, like our own app repository. It should demonstrate what you're asking mentioning. So you can see there's some at the start, some it varies. Um
I'm just ramping up. It looks like.
I just want to keep saying histogram the rest of the way.
Oh no.
One thing I do want to mention is I didn't do this intentionally, but I forgot we've added an indicator now that also shows that these people are maintainers. So like this is our own team. So like for the app repository, Zayu, myself, and Brandon are maintainers, as is John. So this is something also helpful, like because again, like we were kind of talking a bit, Becca, before John hopped on, you know, there a lot of this all this information is coming from GitHub, but it's not necessarily surfaced well when you need it in a certain context. And I think that's like a really powerful part of these things. Obviously, I'm biased because I work here and I work on these things, but like honestly, as a maintainer, this is like more helpful for me because like if all of a sudden you see like, oh, okay, oh well, Zayu's a maintainer, okay, that makes sense. But you could also see like somebody else who isn't a maintainer on the project and they have a ton of contributions. That could be a good signal to say like maybe we should bring this person on or sponsor them. There's just again, I'm just going off the cuff here, just spitballing, but like I think it's just it's all in one place too. That's the thing, like you can go to the repo, you can look at the overview, then you can come to the contributors. There's like, I just like how we're able to bring in a lot of context in like one spot, which I think is like, again, because we have all this data in GitHub, but I think just bringing it together like this is what makes it super valuable. I will get off the
Yeah.
soapbox now.
Yeah. No, preach. It's telling the stories, and I think
Yeah.
illuminating the way.
Yeah.
And I think that's, what's ultimately important. And a lot of the work that we've been doing is about figuring out the data, but to allow people to tell stories and to tell stories about the projects that are out there. Because
Yeah.
that helps the open source ecosystem to feel, I think, more connected, to help us understand each other, who's working on different things. And, knowing who the maintainer is of a project it seems like basic information, but it can be really hard to surface. So it's really nice
Yeah.
to be able to find that in a way and to understand, like, okay, who are the people that I can be reaching out to if I have a question, or
Yeah.
if I just want to say, like, thanks for doing an awesome job on this thing.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah. Yeah, it's like I could totally see this as a way to, like, if people were looking to, like, whether it's an individual or like a OSPO, like an open source program office, if they're going through these things and they're like, wow, Zayu's been putting in tons of contributions. You know what? We've got some funds to sponsor some people. You know what? Let's send some cash their way. Like, there's all kinds of things that you can do. And I kind of want to tie it back to what we talked about yesterday to Becca, if that's okay. I kind of want to
Yeah.
bring us back to workspaces real quick. So like, I'm going to go to the open source one just because we're on the open source repo, but it doesn't have to be. But so if we come to open source here, this is our team workspace. And we talked about this yesterday, but we've got like an overview of all the projects in terms of pull requests, issues, and the kind of engagement here. And we mentioned, as I was saying, as we were saying yesterday, you can filter on a particular repo or repository, but you can also, like, if you're in your workspace, you can click on here and you can go directly to the repo page. So it's kind of, the whole story, like you're caring about what you want to manage or take a peek at. That's your workspace, and then you can kind of zoom in even closer, whether it's going to a repo page or other goodies that we'll be talking about the rest of the week. But yeah.
Before we close up for the day, Nick, I put a tweet in the chat here.
Okay.
Can
Yeah.
you pull that tweet up?
Yeah, except I'm changing the wrong screen. Nobody wants to see my VS Code. Okay, yeah. Let me just pop that open. I'll just zoom this in here, and I'll go ahead and share it in the chat as well.
Yeah. So what this tweet says is 200 likes, and we will rename the lottery factor to the Lambo factor. So if
Oh
you're
yeah,
here
yeah.
today and you want us to change everything that we have just worked so hard on, feel free to troll us by liking and
Yeah.
retweeting this tweet from B. Dougie.
Yeah, we encourage Laravel devs and any PHP devs to boost this as well. Continue the awesome positive discourse between the JS and PHP community. But I do like the Lambo factor. I'm definitely gonna like this one.
All right. Well, I want to say thanks for everyone for joining us here today, and for this lunch week where we've been launching new things every day at lunchtime at OpenSauce. So, again, we had our maintainer course on Monday. Yesterday, we launched Workspaces 1.5. Today, we launched the lottery factor, maybe the Lambo factor in the future, with
Yeah.
our repository pages. And actually, tomorrow, sneak peek is our product hunt. So we're going to drop a link to Product Hunt in the chat here. And if you're interested in giving us feedback or supporting us, please go over to our Product Hunt page tomorrow. I think it goes live at 12:01 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And we'd love to have your comments there and your feedback on Star Search, which is the feature that we're going to be launching tomorrow. We're also going to be doing an extended stream tomorrow. So if you have questions about Star Search or any of the features that we've launched, we will definitely get to those and answer those during our live stream tomorrow. So feel free to DM us or add us on social media. In Discord, you can DM me on Twitter too. Want to make sure that we get all of those questions answered during that stream. And we can chat more with you about the things that interest you. So thanks so much for being here today, and we'll catch you all tomorrow.
Cool.
Thanks,
Cool.
everyone.
Well, yeah, stay saucy, everybody, and yeah, looking forward to tomorrow.